In 1971, in Oahu, up at the rustic retreat on the mountain next to Fort Shafter, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes. Let's look at the stars. We laid on the grass pretending that up was down and that down was up. We then seeming to be glued onto the earth and about to fall into the bottomless deep of the night. It was a scary feeling, but we knew from a "Gravity is the fourth dimension" poster in the Whole Earth catalog that space was expanding, and that the Earth's inertia was slowing down the expansion of local space, a drag causing gravity to hold us down, as like a small piece of flotsam is attracted to a log and its less moving wake in a flowing stream. The night sky glittered with blue sapphires, emeralds, diamonds, and other gems of stars. Photons that had traveled millions of light years reached our eyes from stars that may have been long gone, and caused electrons to be released from the rods and cones of our eyes, the three different types of eye cone proteins rotating according to the amount of primary color wavelengths received. From our mountain view, we could see the 747S noiselessly landing and taking off onto from the coral reef runway that stretched out into the Pacific. Upon asking Cho if all that is had come from nothing or from something, she replied that
the answers are in two locked boxes, each of which contains the other's key.
And that, furthermore, this analogy
was really more of the way things worked as the yin and the yang and vice versa than the ultimate answer.
She continued that
we had to think outside of the locked boxes to gain the ultimate answer, that normal reasoning would not get us very far, that we had to look to unusual reasoning and logic, and that then we might get lucky and guess the answer.
Meanwhile, she added,
we have to make our own meaning in life, and that it was on us if we didn't, for that is perhaps the best one can do. Her guess was that form and motion came out of the formless timeless, since all options would have been open then, except for non-existence, which is not possible, for we are here.
I summarized. Fundamental possibility is the ultimate basis of reality, and has always existed, since nothing could become of nothing. It is fundamentally every possibility at once, in a kind of superposition, since the ultimate ground can have no certain way imparted to it. Note that a fundamental particular state of something actual was totally impossible, for how could the choice have been made as to its specific properties and its total amount? A fundamental state of absolute nothingness was totally impossible too, for there is indeed something that our consciousness interprets, but nothingness may still play a role, as does infinity, eternity, and everything. Fundamental possibility projects the waves that made our local reality, the penultimate reality of electrons, quarks, mass, energy, charge and such, and or strings or whatever. All is as it is in our local reality because it works. I read. Time, space, stuff, change, and form were realized from the fundamental possibility becoming our penultimate reality, one possible from all probabilities. Reality came not from just nothing, but existed always, as possibility, one that amounts to something workable, among all in superposition. No form of our penultimate realness could have existed by itself before everything was quantum known all at once. For what could have made the choice among many? Nor came it from just absolute nothing, since there can be no such action of it. So since either way is impossible, fundamental possibility is. In 1971, in Oahu, up at the rustic retreat on the mountain next to Fort Shafter, with a handsome young army man named Patrick with reddish-brown hair and a Korean-American young woman named Cho with round eyes. In a Theory of Everything forum long ago in the 9th century, Abu Nasr Farabi wrote,
Vague and unrefined did the secrets of existence remain. Unpierced did that highly revered pearl remain. Each person said something according to his reason, yet untold did the point which was of essence remain.
And Abul Hasan Karkwani replied in the 11th century,
The primordial secrets neither you know nor I. The words of the puzzle neither you can read nor I. Your discourse and mine are behind the curtain. When the curtain falls, neither you remain nor I.
But they didn't know how far science would advance and that we would actually be able to see the curtain and derive the truth from it. So we may say more,
Right on. I've been thinking about this fundamental possibility. It solves a lot of problems. It's also what I've been leaning toward lately, although the wild revelations from imaginations have clarified it.
Like what?
Like how the penultimate reality, the fundamental substance, could still have existed forever, or at least in its potential form as timeless, and how its particular form was specifically one that worked instead of one that didn't.
It existed forever because time was born with it, from possibility, the two of them always there as potential.
Yes, there was what is, rather than what was not. For a nothingness could not cut it, for there is surely something here. Yet, maybe the actual needs to balance to nothing since there is no other source.
The fundamental wave substance was the most probable of all possibilities. Time requires the imbalance of all imbalances to move forward, a kind of rare grouping order.
Yes, and perhaps it was the only possibility that would work, so all the superposed imbalances had to trace back to the largest one of all.
Or the others fizzled and failed by going nowhere, sort of a survival of the fittest. Of all the scenarios of consequences of what could serve as reality, a brute force solution, since there could be no thinking, planning, and designing.
And fundamental possibility had to exist, rather than not, for possibility is all there could be as first, it needing nothing but itself before or outside of it. Yet, I'm still trying to adjust to this new way of thinking.
True. Fundamental possibility is a bit like your mind sifting through the eventualities of possible actions. Only this possibility forms substances, not thoughts. It may even be forming some now, here and there, but on a lesser basis than when the universe came into being and expanded. For then, all was wide open, and it is that even the low probability events of huge bangs must ever and eventually happen in eternity's waiting room. Of course, this possibility must remain simple, it producing simple, continuous functions like waves in pairs, that being the price of being fundamental, but we, a 13.75 billion year complex composite, are much more advanced, and that is where real and meaningful life occurs, not in the past.
If fundamental possibility could talk, which it can't, for it is not a system, it might say something much the same as I would now in my quest for the theory of everything. I'll follow every single avenue, whether it's brightly lit or a dark alley, exploring one-ways, no-ways, and dead ends, until cornered where the truth is hiding. And now we've arrived in that dark corner, and so we can live life better by knowing who we are and how we became. Some simple substances gave rise to everything, chosen as probable above the rest, knowing at once that they would function well, the most promising, the possible ones. In other words, their paths of possibility went further. However, unlike the simple.
In 1971, in Oahu, up at the cabin retreat on the mountain next to Fort Shafter, with a handsome young army man named Patrick and a Korean-American young woman named Cho.
Something actual having been forever and the getting of something actual from just nothing are both impossible.
The solution gets down to the reason that the all must be without limit, or it wouldn't be the all. So it must be both eternal, which is more like timeless in its potential of anything and everything. That there is nothing to make things of still haunts. However, the all must be creative, of nothing perhaps, which is still a something. And we do observe a balance of polarity of charge, matter, and antimatter, a weak and a strong nuclear force, and gravity's negative potential energy said to balance the positive kinetic energy of stuff, not to mention fields making particles and particles making fields. So, there has to be a balance of opposites, which must sum to zero. One could say that nothing cannot ever be or stay because it is perfectly unstable. The fundamental potential possibility is neither nothing nor is it something actual. Somehow it is in between, yet a something in other terms. In 1971 in Oahu, up at the cabin retreat on the mountain next to Fort Shafter, with a handsome young army man named Patrick and a Korean-American young woman named Cho. In other words, their paths of possibility went further. However, unlike the simple beginnings, the further possibilities of the actual complexities of everything are unbounded. And that's the greatest thing.
As to how complex, there is no limit except perhaps when it forms a black hole. And the smallest is the Planck distance, so size is absolute, not relative.
All in all, we are the lucky ones, standing atop the pinnacle of time, change, form, and substance. Life is waiting, and when we have the right attitude, we will come to not even know what sorrow is. We continued on through the entangled forest.
Our minds do seem to make the actual from the possible, don't they?
Well, possibility was our birthplace, so perhaps we retain a version of it.
We create thought.
We went then back into a superposition, as sleep's circles soon arrived and drew us in. False dawn came and went, and, in other words, it dawned on us that morning had arrived. A nuclear furnace appeared in the sky, namely, the sun, and we lounged around until duty called. We rode the tubes of blue and snorkeled over to Molokai for a 3-day weekend, a distance of 25 miles or so, but our fins made it effortless. The spawning whales, our mammalian cousins, cheered us on. We scaled the high cliffs. The former leper colony made us welcome with drinks and a roast pig. All these islands formed from volcanoes that rose from the ocean floor, and we could feel ourselves getting higher also. The army soon offered a religious retreat to the Big Island of Hawaii, and so we went. It wasn't too bad, for a lot of it was free time for meditation. We meditated on going places, and when we were hitching a ride somewhere, a scientist picked us up and let us go to the Mauna Kea Astronomical Observatory with him, a stroke of luck. Snow was on the Mauna Kea mountaintop, and from there, we could almost see forever. As twilight began its end, the scientists let us look through the telescope just before darkness arrived, along with all the more serious astronomers, who had time reserved on it. I saw the wonder of wonders of 1,000,000 galaxies and nebulas whirling away as another forever. We also toured the control center at the base of the mountain, where one could also observe via what others were focusing on.